Good morning, everyone. All of you who are in the room and also to you who are on the screen. This morning we have the great honor of welcoming our Minister of the Environment, the Honourable Stephen Guilbeault. I think it's the first time that he appears before our committee, and we do hope that he'll be back here often with us to give us updates on the policies that he's in the process of implementing. I think everybody here, whether or not they're a member of Parliament or a member of the committee or from the public service, I think everybody knows the rules of a hybrid meeting, so I don't want to take time repeating the guidelines. But as you know, if you move around the room, you must be masked, and also you must respect social distancing. If you're on the screen, please keep your mic off until you have the floor. And also, for those who are joining us from home, as we say, today we are dealing with the Supplementary Estimate C. We have a lot of interveners today. In addition to the Minister, unfortunately, I can't take the time to introduce everyone, but we know each other very well, and we certainly appreciate your being with us today. So, Minister, you have the floor. Madame Bolduc, I'd just like to remind everyone, when you speak, to take your mask off, because it's much easier for the interpreters. Please take your mask off before you speak, because, as has been pointed out to us, the sound is muffled for the interpreters, and it's extremely difficult for them to understand what you're saying. Mr. Minister, thank you so much. Chair, I'm so very happy to appear before your committee as often as possible. I thank you for having invited me today.
From the Department of Environment and Climate Change, Christine Hogan, Deputy Minister, Paula Luca, Associate Deputy Minister, Terence Hubbard. Terence is over there. No. Oh, right here. Sorry. Terence, President of the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. Andrew Campbell over there, Senior Vice President of Operations at Parks Canada. Linda Drainville, Associate Deputy Minister, Corporate Finance. And Catherine Blanchard, CFO. I would like to recognize that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. Il s'agit, comme vous l'avez dit, Monsieur le Président.
As you said, Chair, this is my first meeting with you as Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. I've been looking forward to having this conversation with all of you concerning the 21-22 Supplementary Estimate C for Environment and Climate Change Canada, the Parks Canada Agency, and the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. As many of you know, the Supplementary Estimate C is the last opportunity for departments and agencies to adjust their 2021-22 main estimates. Like you, I view the responsibilities under my portfolio as amongst the most critical. We understand that the health and well-being of Canadians depends on a healthy environment and economy. Ambitious commitments have never been more timely and more critical than now.
Me to ensuring delivery of Canada's Strengthened Climate Plan, implementation of the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act, bringing forward an emissions reduction plan to achieve our 2030 targets by reducing emissions to 40 to 45% below 2005 levels, and further accelerate climate action to achieve net zero emissions by 2050 and limit the increase in global average temperatures to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Depuis 2016, notre engagement.
Since 2016, the government has committed more than $100 billion to climate action and environmental protection, including $60 billion under the Pan-Canadian Framework, the Investing in Canada Plan, and more. $15 billion under the Strengthened Climate Plan, $15 billion under Budget 2021, and $20 billion via other initiatives like the COVID-19 Economic Response Plan, permanent transit funding, and much more. But we're not just mitigating emissions. We are working towards a whole-of-society approach to adapt to the impacts of climate change. And we've also committed to protecting 25% of Canada's lands and inland waters, 25% of oceans, and 25% by 30% rather by 2030.
To address pollution, to ensure that our water remains clean and healthy, and continue to provide reliable weather forecasts. The agencies in my portfolio are also conducting impact assessments and helping to ensure Canadians have access to nature and historic sites. All of this work and more is foundational to creating the conditions to ensure a more resilient, equitable, and prosperous Canada. In addition, it is supported by the 2021-22 Supplementary Estimate C before us today. Pour Environnement et Changement Climatique Canada,
for Environment and Climate Change Canada, the Department's submission amounts to a net increase of $48.6 million. This would bring the Department's total authorities to $2 billion.
Include $9.8 million to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the transportation and waste sectors. This funding will go towards strengthening and implementing greenhouse gas emissions regulations and zero-emission requirements. It would also help us develop, implement, and enforce federal landfill methane regulations, as well as additional steps to support food diversion and energy recovery from biodegradable waste. There is a request for $7.3 million to help return proceeds from the output-based pricing system to the originating jurisdictions as required by the Greenhouse Gas Pollution Pricing Act. These funds would go towards operating a program to help reduce industrial greenhouse gas emissions and support clean electricity projects. A portion of this request would support co-development work with Indigenous recipients to return a portion of proceeds from the regulatory charge on fossil fuels, known as the fuel charge, in jurisdiction where the federal backstop approach is in effect, namely Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Ontario. These funds will provide long-term flexible support for Indigenous-led climate initiative. There's also $7.9 million to establish the Canadian Water Agency Transition Office. I know you've heard of the Canada Water Agency. It will work with provinces and territories, Indigenous communities, local authorities, scientists, and other stakeholders to find the best ways to ensure that our water remains clean, healthy, and well managed. The Transition Office will define the scope of the Canada Water Agency, prepare the agency, and ensure its establishment. Comme les membres le savent, aucune nation ne...
As members know, no nation can achieve the much-needed transition to a low-carbon, climate-resilient, and nature-friendly economy on its own. We all need to be engaged. The request for $6.5 million to implement Canada's International Climate Finance Program aims to help developing countries achieve this transition. Mr. Chair, I am sure that all members are also well aware of the record-breaking heat waves and flooding out west this year. There is just over $3.2 million to support wildfire and flood resilience. These funds would help produce floodplain data and maps for communities across Canada most at risk of flooding. They would also support flood prevention, mitigation, and response and planning activities as well.
You may have heard of the Climate Lens. It aims to help integrate climate, economic, and social considerations into government decision-making. These estimates include $1.9 million to establish and operate a Climate Lens Center of Expertise and help a core group of departments pilot and implement the Climate Lens. Mr. Chair, these are some of the highlights of the Supplementary Estimate C for Environment and Climate Change Canada. There are also several transfers in and out of department, as well as reallocations and grants, which members can ask about today. Monsieur le Président, regardons maintenant.
Let's now turn to Parks Canada. Through the 2021-2022 supplementary estimates, see the agency is seeking to increase its reference levels by $14.8 million. This includes $7.5 million to help strengthen operational capacity to prevent and respond to wildfires in Parks Canada administered protected areas, such as protecting the safety of visitors, built facilities, and natural and cultural assets.
Parks Canada is advancing reconciliation with Indigenous peoples in many ways. There is $2.1 million to increase resources and capacity for the wrecks of HMS Erebus and Terror National Historic Site. This is a tremendous opportunity for Parks Canada and Inuit to work together on one of the largest, most complex archaeological initiatives in Canada's history. There is also $1.5 million to support a more proactive and timely approach to Indigenous negotiations to implement rights, while reducing litigation risk, building partnerships, and advancing mutual priorities. There's a request for a grant of up to $1.75 million to the Yellowknives Dene First Nation to fulfill the agency's commitment to establish the Taidane National Park Reserve. There's also $400,000 to advance reconciliation with the Innu of Labrador and pursue work of an impact and benefits agreement with the cooperation management of the Akami-Wakushkwak-Kwakwaswak, Merely Mountains National Park Reserves. And $250,000 will enable the ratification of an Inuit Impact and Benefit Agreement with the Kitimiwik Inuit Association for National Historic Sites in the Nunavut Settlement Area, including the wrecks of HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror National Historic Site. In addition, there's a request for $1 million to promote visitation to and protection of Parks Canada administered heritage places and support safe and sustainable tourism recovery. There's also a request for transfers with other government departments that total about $400,000. Monsieur le Président, j'aimerais maintenant dire...
Mr. Chair, I'd now like to turn to the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. The Impact Assessment Agency of Canada is responsible for conducting impact assessments under the Impact Assessment Act, which came into force in August 2019. It reviews major projects in Canada for sustainability by considering environmental, economic, social, and health impacts of proposed projects over the long term. It is also responsible for ongoing assessments initiated under the former Canadian Environmental Assessment Act, 2012.
2021-2022 Supplementary Estimate C will raise the agency's total approved spending from almost $82 million to about $82.8 million. This includes a $1 million transfer from Environment and Climate Change Canada, largely to support the agency's work to administer funding for the Regional Information and Monitoring Network, part of the Ottawa River Watershed Initiative led by Environment and Climate Change Canada and the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. It also includes a transfer of $155,000 to the Natural Science and Engineering Research Council to contribute to grants that will ultimately support the new impact assessment system. Avant de terminer, j'aimerais souligner.
Before I end, I want to emphasize that I value your commitment and contribution, helping to ensure the health and well-being of our environment, economy, and all Canadians. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you. I'm happy to take your questions now. Thank you so much, Minister. I would also like to point out before we go into the first round that we have Madame Lena Metlage-Dieu with us and Ms. Elizabeth May. So we'll begin our first round with Mr. Seaback. 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Minister, in your opening statement, you talk about $60 billion under the Pan-Canadian framework, which is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In 2016, and you talk about 2016, greenhouse gas emissions in Canada were 707 megatons, and in 2019, there's 730 megatons. This is from Environment Canada and Climate Change website. So if it takes $60 billion to increase greenhouse gas emissions by 23 megatons, how much is it going to cost to get us to the 45% reduction that you're talking about in your plan?
Thank you for the question. And I would I would invite you to take a second look at the 2019 inventories, because if you look at the projections to 2030, when we came into power, those projections show that we would increase greenhouse gas emissions by 12%, and now those same projections shows that we are in the process of reducing those emissions by 30 million tons, so, which is equivalent roughly to, I mean, Quebec as a whole emits 80 million tons per year. So we are changing the course of climate change emissions in Canada. As I said in my presentation, next week I will be tabling the emissions reduction report, which will give you in great details everything we've done so far, how much our emissions reduction have been reduced, where the projections are to 2030, and what we need to do to achieve our 2030 targets.
Well, I understand what projections are. What I'm dealing with are the hard facts, which is that for $60 billion, greenhouse gas emissions went up by 23 megatons. This is based on your department's published figures in of itself. So you're saying that don't worry about that. This extra money we're going to spend is going to get us there? Sorry, sort of a don't worry, be happy?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we have started to deploy the plan, which is composed of regulations, legislations, and investments, as you point out.
We deployed the plan in 2016.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just answer the question. Those investments are not fully deployed. We have started some programs. Some are in the process of being finalized. So the money has started going out the door, but those $60 billion have not been fully invested yet.
Okay. But do you agree or disagree that since 2016 to 2019, greenhouse gas emissions under your government have gone up by 23 megatons?
I agree with what's in the 2019 inventory, absolutely. We will have more good news for you in the coming weeks on Canada's inventories.
So under Vote 1C, it's funding for carbon pollution pricing proceeds return. I want to ask you, have you or your department done an analysis of the disproportionate impacts of the carbon tax on people in rural communities? You talk about the average. I asked you a question in the House of Commons yesterday about a senior in my riding that says she keeps her heat so low she feels like she's freezing because the cost of propane and the carbon tax, she can't make ends meet. Has your department looked at the disproportionate impacts of the carbon pricing on rural Canadians?
As you know, according to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, 8 out of 10 households are better off with carbon pricing. So it's true that the richest amongst us in Canada do not benefit from the rebates. But 8 out of 10 households are better off with the implementation of the carbon pricing system.
I've heard the number 8 out of 10, but have you looked at rural communities? Because rural communities don't have energy alternatives. They heat their homes with propane. They have to drive and commute often long distances to get to work, which means they're using gasoline. Have you looked at the disproportionate impacts on rural Canadians? I can tell you, people in my riding talk about it all the time.
You know that there's a 10% addition for rural households to the system. So there is clearly a rural lens that is applied to carbon pricing. But specifically, if the department has done an analysis of, I could perhaps ask the department.
I'll ask them in the second hour. But if it hasn't been done, will you commit today to have the department look at the impacts of the backstop on rural communities?
You're asking me a question and you're not allowing me to provide you with the answer. If you want, we can ask the department if it has been done, and then you will have the answer, and then we don't have to go into hypotheticals.
Sure.
Christine, would you?
We'll follow up in the second hour.
Okay, then I'm going to ask you, if it hasn't been done, will you commit to doing that?
We will make sure that if it hasn't been done, then it's done.
You have a minute?
Oh, excellent. So when we look at funding to renew and advantage clean technology enabling measures, also under Vote 1C, you've issued green bonds, and you've excluded nuclear and LNG from green bonds. We know that even the former governor of the Bank of Canada has said there's no path to net zero without nuclear. Converting a steel plant in Ontario from coal to LNG, which is taking place right now, will save 3 megatons per year. Why were these two things excluded from green bonds?
Briefly, please, Minister.
Thank you for the question. As you know, it's our first issuance of sovereign bonds in Canada. We have worked with TD Securities and HSBC, who made recommendations in terms of what are the best practices for sovereign bonds in countries similar to ours. I could think of France, European Union, which also include fossil fuels and nuclear energy. Since it's the first time we were doing it, we wanted to go with the best practices internationally, and that's what we did.
Thank you. Mr. Weiler for 6 minutes.
I'd like to thank the Minister for his first visit to our committee and hopefully the first of many. First question here. Over the last couple of years, we've seen the provincial NDP government in BC increase the pace at which old growth has been logged, in spite of an old growth strategic review that's recommended immediate deferrals, which has led to widespread protest throughout the province. And recently, the Sierra Club and the Wilderness Committee issued a very dismal report card on progress on this strategy. Your mandate letter includes the commitment to bring forward federal funding to protect old-growth forests, as well as to conclude a nature agreement with the province to protect some of the last intact old growth in BC. I was hoping you could please update this committee on progress on concluding this agreement.
Thank you for the question. This is clearly something that myself and the department are very seized with. We've had a number of meetings with BC ministers in the 4 months that I've been Environment and Climate Change Minister, specifically on the question of old growth species at risks, as well as nature, the signing of a nature agreement with the province of British Columbia. And I can tell you that the work is going well. There's good collaboration, and I think that everyone agrees that it's in our best interest to come to an agreement on this. The alternative would be for federal government, in the case of certain areas where species are at risk, to intervene unilaterally, which is not something that we want to do.
As part of the Net Zero Accountability Act that became law last year, the government's required, as you mentioned in your opening, to table emissions reductions plan by the end of this month that's going to indicate how we're going to be able to get to our 2030 GHG reduction goals. But your mandate letter also includes a commitment to bring in a cap on oil and gas emissions that's going to steadily decline in 5-year increments. So I was hoping you could give some information to the committee on when you expect this cap to be announced and how we're able to reliably report and track our emissions reductions goals without including certainty on our largest and fastest growing source of emissions.
Thank you for the question. The emissions reduction plan that will be tabled next week is going to be the first of many, but it's going to be the first time where we show parliamentarians as well as Canadians everything we've done so far. Where are we in terms of emission reduction? It's going to include modeling, and it's also going to include sectoral emissions for 2030. And these are not targets per se, but according to the analysis that the department did, this is our best analysis of where we think that various sectors of the Canadian economy need to be in terms of their emission reduction in 2030 for us to achieve our target. So this will not be the cap specifically in the case of oil and gas. We have started consultations on the oil and gas cap. In fact, I was in Calgary just before Christmas to meet some oil executives, and I was really fascinated. I mean, Christine was there with me as well as other officials, and everyone we met from the private sector said, "We want to work with you on this cap." I did not meet one single representative from the private sector who said, we don't want to have anything to do with this oil and gas cap. In fact, the cap was inspired by the fact that some of the largest oil companies in Canada said we want to be net zero by 2050. So the cap is simply a way for us to put that commitment into regulation and to chart a course as to how we get there. So all of the measures that we've announced will be included in the emissions reduction plan, keeping in mind that some are in the process of being developed.
Thank you, and that's reassuring to hear. Canada's brought forward carbon pricing for large industry through the output-based pricing system that requires industry to emit less than the industry average for that sector. as well as provide credits for reducing emissions even further. Canada is also in the process of finalizing the clean fuel standard that will provide compliance credits for reducing the emissions intensity for oil and gas. And we've also proposed bringing forward a tax credit for carbon capture, utilization, and storage in a space to encourage investment in a space that the IEA has recognized as critical to meeting the world's GHG reduction targets. But given we have these three mechanisms, what assurances can Environment and Climate Change Canada provide that the emissions reductions activities won't be able to double or triple count with these three mechanisms, and indeed be able to show that emissions reductions will be verifiable and additional to what would already be required under our carbon pricing system?
This is a really good question, and certainly something that the department and my team are working hard on, as well as Minister Wilkinson and Minister McKenna before, to make sure that there's no double counting, because sometimes it is a bit complicated. There are a number of measures, pricing, you talked about the clean fuel standards, the cap. So we have to make sure that our methodologies are solid, to ensure that, you know, when we say that a ton is being reduced, that an actual ton is being reduced. We have a very robust system when it comes to inventories based on the IPCC methodologies that we update as they are updated internationally. But this is something we pay very close attention to.
Merci. Merci. On va passer maintenant.
Thank you. We'll move to Madame Posey. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Minister for being with us today. I'm going to establish a link with the work that was done by our committee on radioactive waste. We've heard much said about it. You spoke in your speech about the Canadian Water Agency. But I have to say, I'm not always sure that the priorities, protecting water, of course, drinkable water is important because we're made up, the Earth contains 2/3 water, and the species at risk are also a concern. Would you be receptive then, given all this, to the idea that the governance for radioactive waste be brought over to you? That would make people feel more safe. It's really something that should be under the flag of the environment rather than Natural Resources Canada. Thank you so much. Honestly, it's the first time I've heard anything about this proposal. I've never heard anything said about this before, that this was a proposal that could perhaps be followed up with the department. Well, yes, thank you very much. This is a concern that came up during the course of our study, where people felt that it should be moved over to environment. In the document of Monday, but on page 7, it's the advisory group on net neutrality, zero net. I see that there was mention of a joint undertaking by Natural Resources and your department that dealt with the reduction of emissions that came from producing fuels. But it dealt also with the reduction of production itself. So why did you move away from establishing a ceiling that was referred to in the letter from the advisory group? Well, I think that you have to distinguish between emissions and production. Production is provincial in jurisdiction. The federal government can regulate and legislate on emissions, and that is exactly what we do. So this notion of establishing a cap for emissions for GHGs and so on is something that comes under our jurisdiction, and it is pollution. but we don't have anything really to do with that type of proposal that was made during the last election campaign. Well, if there are caps, you don't spend. But no, it's a cap on emissions. It's not a cap on production itself. Okay. Could you perhaps formalize this with you? When the advisory group meets, there could be systematically a meeting with the committee as well. It seems that's a reasonable request, but I have to say that you'd have to perhaps check with the committee. We would, of course, like to have exchanges and dialogue with them as well. Another request that is on page 10 from the advisory group's document, when they talk about a digitized platform to give advice and information about climate change by the end of 2023. This is number 3 in the document. So it deals with GHGs. And under number 4, they wanted to know the methods that would be used to ensure that there would be solid, transparent explanations for the GSG activity. It seems to me that governments, universities, industry, and civil society are all concerned. You can find that on page 10. Of course, it's not in the supplementary estimates that I'm going to be able to find all this, but harking back to the Monday document, could this not be included in the general budget? Well, as for digitization, I really don't know. I have to turn to my colleagues to know if anything at all has been done with respect to that that would meet the recommendation of the committee. Thank you so much for your question.
We received the advisory board's report on Monday, and
Attendez.
oh, pardon, and are digesting the recommendations contained in it. And I think the idea of gap filling and some of the issues that they've identified from a governance point of view and the roles of different ministries to get at some of these issues going forward, I think is a very sensible recommendation. So we will be looking at that in the context of our work going forward.
Merci. Alors, on va passer à Madame.
Thank you. Ms. Collins now, 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister for being here to answer our questions. The horizontal initiatives include funding to establish the Sustainable Finance Action Council. The council only includes representatives from Canada's financial institutions, so it excludes climate experts, civil society, Indigenous groups from contributing, despite the recommendation from the expert panel report on sustainable finance that they actually be included. My financial industry has been very slow to address the risks of the climate crisis, and they continue to push for inadequate and voluntary standards. Expert and civil society input on financial reform is critical if we're going to achieve financial regulatory reforms that will help Canada reach its climate targets. So I'm curious, why wasn't the advice of the expert panel report on sustainable finance to include experts and civil society followed?
It's a good question, and as you know, I wasn't minister at the time that decision was made. I could certainly look with the department as to why the decision was made the way it was, and we could follow up with you. That being said, you've probably seen, like I have, that we are starting to make some progress in Canada. I'm not saying we're a leader on these issues, but the Bank of Canada report, the OSFI report.
And really my question is if there's an interest from your ministry to head in a direction where we're including civil society and expert analysis into this.
Beyond the Action Council, we are seeking the input of Indigenous communities.
I absolutely hear, Minister. It's really, my question is about this council in particular, and that the advice was to include that expert, climate experts, civil society, Indigenous groups, so that they can form policy as well.
So if your question specifically on that, I will have to go back and follow up with you.
Thank you, Minister. Canada's been falling behind our peers in ensuring Canada's financial sector is prepared for climate risks. Canada's banks are some of the largest financiers of the fossil fuel industry. Why should the financial or finance industry be trusted to effectively regulate itself?
I mean, if you look at the composition of the SFAC, we have people who are experts in their field, people who have undertaken a number of initiatives to help Canada improve what it's doing when it comes to climate finance.
And I have no doubt, but they are representatives of Canada's financial institutions. Their interest lies with the people that they represent. So that's fundamentally my concern. But maybe
have you met with them? I would, if you haven't, I would encourage you to do so. I was pleasantly surprised to see that there are a number of very active and activist. I know not everyone likes this term here, but
I thank you so much for the recommendation, and I'll follow up on that. I hope that you will take the concern that I'm expressing seriously.
Oh, yes.
So the horizontal initiatives include funding to help developing countries address the impact of climate change. At COP26, Canada was reluctant to show leadership and commit to our fair share towards loss and damage funds. The Climate Finance Delivery Plan pulled together by Germany and Canada does not even mention loss and damage. The impacts of the climate crisis are already a reality for people around the world, here in BC, but disproportionately impacting lower-income countries, displacing more than 30 million people in 2020 alone. Poor and vulnerable countries are least responsible for climate change, but are already facing the worst of its negative impacts. So I'm curious why Canada has been reluctant to pay its fair share towards loss and damage finance.
I would beg to differ when it comes to doing our fair share. We've doubled our climate finance commitment in the lead up to the Glasgow meeting. We've increased from 30 to 40% our share of grants versus loans, and I know that there is a willingness or a request that it be 50-50. We were at 30-70. We're at 40-60. We're definitely going in the right direction. And on loss and damages, I mean, it's a complex decision. We have agreed to the establishment of the Santiago network, which will inform how countries could move forward on the issue of loss and damages. And Canada is a happy and willing party to this initiative.
I want to follow up on one of Madame Posé's questions. You stated publicly that your government promised oil and gas emissions cap will not be part of the emissions reduction plan due next week. Do you plan to follow the Net Zero Advisory Body's advice to set legally binding oil and gas sector emissions targets?
I know there was an article that said that the oil and gas cap would not be part of the emissions reduction plan. Everything we're doing will be part of the emissions reduction plan, keeping in mind that some of our commitments are still under development. And we have said it wouldn't be a voluntary cap. We've been very clear on that. Is it going to be regulated or legislated? The consultations will inform that decision. As you know, obviously, the different paths are available for us to do this, and that's why we're consulting.
The Net Zero Advisory Body's advice is that carbon removals and offsets should only be used as a last resort. Currently, the CCUS capture capacity is only 0.1% of global annual emissions, and the IPCC points to uncertainty in the future deployment of carbon capture, utilization, and storage, and cautions against reliance on the technology. How does this align with your support of the CCUS tax credit?
Minister, if you wouldn't mind answering the question maybe at another opportunity, and because we're at 6 minutes, so I'd like to go to the second round, but you can work that answer in, of course.
Instead of answering someone else's question?
Well, there might be some commonalities. There might be some commonalities. I mean, we are very collegial here, and we all want the same thing, which
of course, Mr. Chair.
To combat climate change. Mr. Dreeshen, for 5 minutes, please.
Mr. Minister, and if I was to discuss that, I'd probably take that from exactly the opposite direction. But I would like to talk to you about one of the grants and contributions, the Terrestrial Cumulative Effects Initiative, and the transfers over to natural resources. This government has stated its support for the development of an action plan with Indigenous people to implement UNDRIP in Canada, and indicating that that can be a powerful tool to build the alignments, to understand mutual expectations, and to close existing significant socioeconomic gaps for Indigenous people. And as we look at the environmental policies put forward by your government and the fact that 65% of Indigenous people support natural resource development, it seems like there is a potential in the making. So I'm just wondering how you see the future of oil and gas development in Indigenous communities under the UNDRIP umbrella that acknowledges the need to maintain Canada's competitiveness as a consideration that is important to reconciliation. And can you explain how you will manage those who choose to develop oil and gas under their inherent rights to lands, territories, and resources?
Thank you for the question. As the Prime Minister has said time and time again, no relationship is as important to us as our relationship with Indigenous people. And I think that going forward, there is no scenario where we will continue developing resources or protected and conservation areas without the full involvement of Indigenous peoples.
So specifically then to their oil and gas development, because we hear a lot of, well, this is that they want to shut it down, they want to do this, and so on. Well, that's not the way it is in their communities, and they are full partners, and they are looking forward to opportunities for them to be able to engage in an industry that is in their backyard. And so I just really want to talk about, is your government going to look at that and say, maybe we can change the rhetoric? Oil and gas is something that is important to Indigenous Canadians.
I would never speak on behalf of Indigenous peoples, but I think we can probably agree that as in the rest of Canadian society, there are different views about many of these issues. And perhaps I could turn to...
If I can always come back later. I'll just make this final point on that, if you don't mind. We do tend to speak on behalf of Indigenous people when it fits our narrative. So, but what I would like to talk about, you also mentioned that no nation can do it on its own. And if you think of the fact that Russia and China just a month ago had a 100 million ton agreement as far as coal is concerned, we know what is happening there. We understand the situations that are happening in Eastern Europe, and the ramifications of that, and also the significance of here in Canada. We can help. We could have been right there to help, but we can help. So I'm just wondering if, when we're talking about money being spent on international initiatives and so on, if we're starting to take a different focus because of the realities that are taking place in the world right now, or are we still just dealing with the certain mantra that we have to do our part even though the rest of the world is kind of falling apart?
On climate change, I would disagree with your characterization of what is happening. I have been speaking with my counterparts, both from southern and northern countries, European ministers, Germany, France, the United Kingdom, Special Envoy Kerry this weekend, and everybody is saying we need to continue and even accelerate the transition towards the green economy.
I certainly, and I appreciate that. I've also spoken with European leaders, and they are also looking at the practicality and the situation that is occurring right now. Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2, we recognize the reasons why that was shut down. I mean, this is a case of us not being prepared. So we've taken the natural resources that we have in this country, which has been that which has built our hospitals, our schools, and everything else, and given us the ability to have a safety net. And here we are now not prepared because we have put all of these roadblocks in place. So I'm just wondering, as we work our way through this, when you speak about emission reduction plan and that, is there a recognition of what has actually helped us move forward? Because I think that's something that's critical in our conversation.
20 seconds, please, Minister.
I think Canada is very well positioned when it comes to energy security. I think that we're probably one of the best country in the world when it comes to our energy security And frankly, I mean, we are, as other countries are, seeing the impacts of the war in Ukraine, and certainly the increase in crude oil prices, for example. But Canada is very well positioned on energy security.
Thank you. We'll go now to Mr. Longfield for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it's so nice to not have to look at whether I'm muted or unmuted. We're here face to face, and thank you so much for being with us this morning. My first question has to do with the Canada Water Agency. Our committee in the last Parliament worked on the Net Zero Accountability Act. A big part of our discussion and, in fact, recommendations was that this agency would be created and that it would be extra outside of government. And then this week, World Water Day on Tuesday, we had Elder Claudette Commanda talking about the connection between water and climate change, and that the crisis really is the life of the planet, and the water is the lifeblood of the planet. So supplementary estimates, vote 1C and 10C talk about, and you mentioned in your presentation, Minister, $7,855,539 for the creation of this agency. When are we going to hear from them? When is the first report coming from them? What's the status of that agency, if you don't mind?
Thank you for the question. In many ways, I suspect Member Duguid would be better at answering this question than I would from all the work he's done on that. It's probably why he is leading this file for us. I think you're going to see significant progress in the coming months. COVID slowed the work of the implementation of the water agency somewhat. We would have wanted to be further ahead than we are now, but I think you're going to see significant progress in the coming months.
Okay, well, we'll be watching. Very interested in hearing from it. I want to build on a question from Madame Posey, where we were just studying nuclear waste. And in your presentation, you talked about the increased funding going towards the Impact Assessment Agency, $1 million transfer looking at the Ottawa River watershed, which was something we talked about during our committee. We have a report that is being drafted and we will be working on, and we will be presenting in the House hopefully soon. Could you maybe give us a little bit more detail on how the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada is interfacing with nuclear waste?
I think Terry would be ideally placed, Terrence, to do that.
Thank you for the question. So the Impact Assessment Agency is implementing a new framework for impact assessment.
That's good.
Oh, apologize.
For the translators.
So as part of that new framework, we'll be working with the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission and other federal expert departments to assess not only the environmental impacts, but the environmental, economic, social, and health impacts associated with proposed projects. A key aspect of that is meaningful consultations, both with the local communities that are involved in it, the Indigenous communities, to ensure that those perspectives are well heard, well understood, and to develop a comprehensive set of mitigation measures and proposals to inform Minister or GIC, as the case may be, to take an inclusive public interest decision on whether or not those development proposals are in the public interest.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard. And it'll be interesting to see how that aligns with recommendations that our committee will be coming forward with from our study, and see whether we're on the right page or same page. Also in sustainable, or in supplementary estimates, vote 1C, there was $678,000 going towards the Sustainable Finance Action Council. I know Member Collins has also talked about the Sustainable Finance Action Council. My interest is on how that aligns with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, Minister. Sometimes we focus only on environmental goals, but when we talk about sustainable development, we have 17 SDGs and a 2030 timeframe looking at us right now that's coming quickly. How does the work of the Sustainable Finance Action Council align with the United Nations Sustainable Goals?
That's a good question. Obviously, their mandate is very specific to sustainable finance, but it is up to us as a government to ensure that it is part of our larger commitments on SDGs. We will be coming out with our new sustainable development strategy in a very near future. for 2022 to 2026, if memory serves me right. And we are looking at the various elements of the Sustainable Development Goals, which certainly includes climate change, sustainable finance, water as part of that package.
Great.
Merci,
Thank you very
merci
much.
beaucoup. Merci. Alors,
Thank you. We'll go back to Madame Posé, 2.5 minutes. Going from one committee study to another, you realize that there are subsidies with respect to fossil fuels, but there has to be a peer review under the terms of the G20, and Canada is paired with Argentina. That process of review is in the hands of the G20. Do you have any news about what's going on with this report? We've gone well over the 24-month limit. Excellent question. I would remind you that in our platform, we wanted to be able to eliminate the subsidies as defined by the G20 because they were inefficient. But the second commitment that is linked to that is anything that could be tied to fossil fuels. In coming months, you're going to see that we will be bringing out programs that will involve the whole population on these issues. But what about the report from Argentina? Well, I'll look into it. Another question. There was another council that was set up in 2021 on sustainable finance action. Can we know exactly what the report of this Sustainable Finance Action Council is going to contain? When is it coming out? Yes, it is at work now, and perhaps some guests could come to meet with you and explain the work that they are doing currently. I don't know if Ms. May has a question. I have no other questions. Well, you only have 30 seconds. I have a very brief question.
This is my question. I want to stay at a very high level. Emissions reduction plan is to the current targets, which are inadequate to meet our Paris goal of staying as far below 2 degrees and holding to 1.5 degrees Celsius. We know that at the end of COP26, the Secretariat of the UNFCCC said right now we'd succeeded in going from being 16% above 2010 by 2030 to being 13.7% below, and that's the world. So my question is going to be, when you have time to answer it, which I don't think will be now, but maybe, when will Canada seriously considering updating our NDCs? Because we really need to do it before COP27.
you could answer that in response to someone else. This is how we work in this.
I'm finding I'm having very little success at doing that, Mr. Chair. The quality of questions.
You just have to go for it when the time.
Mr. Chair, with your permission, I have been passing the begging bowl around, hoping members could give me a little bit of their time here and there. So maybe we'll get another chance.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind. Yeah. We'll go now to Ms. Collins.
Maybe first, the Canada Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act, except for Section 23, came into force right away. I'm curious, why hasn't the date for the financial reporting requirement to come into force been set? What's the delay?
Good question. I don't
Could
have
you
the answer,
provide that in writing to our committee?
Of course.
Thank
yes.
you. Next,
you want
maybe
me to answer your
back to the
question?
initial question. Yeah.
That's a good question. And if you look at, both the IPCC and actually the IEA do talk about the need for carbon removals, but as not as the beginning of a strategy, but as a last resort. And I agree with that, which is why we've invested $30 billion in transit. We're investing in electrification.
If we could stick to the CCUS.
But what I'm saying is that we've put in place 100 measures, $100 billion of investment, and after we've done all of that, we started looking at removal technologies. Our climate change strategy didn't start with removals.
So
It's finishing. I mean, it's
Oil and gas companies are currently making record profits. If the CCUS is critical for them to reduce their emissions, then there's no reason they shouldn't pay for these investments themselves. When Canadians are struggling with the cost of living, why is the government continuing to give handouts to the fossil fuel industry?
I would disagree with the characterization of your questions. We've made a commitment that our transition would be a just transition, that we would work with every sector of the economy, that we would work with every regions of the country. We're helping steel decarbonize. We're helping
Suncor is
cement.
giving hundreds of millions out to their shareholders. You know, when we're talking about fossil fuel subsidies, and following up on some of the comments, sorry, how many seconds? A minute, okay. You know, I recently asked an order paper question and got a response back from the department that we still haven't defined what is a efficient or inefficient fossil fuel subsidy. What is the definition of a efficient fossil fuel subsidy for you, and why has it not been set after 6 years?
As I was telling Member Posey, we've made two commitments in our platform, one regarding G20 type subsidies and another one regarding just about everything else. So, frankly, I think we're beyond this debate of inefficient or efficient subsidies. We've made a commitment to stop subsidizing.
Is there a commitment to align our definition with internationally agreed upon definitions for robust criteria for efficiency?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that. Mazer.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Minister. I'm going to be focusing on the first line under budgetary voted appropriations with regards to electric vehicles. So your government will be mandating the sale of electric vehicles, and I represent rural Canadians. My riding in Dauphin Swan River Neep was geographically just slightly larger than the province of Nova Scotia. Do you know how many public charging stations there are in my riding?
I don't.
I didn't expect you to know. There are 5, Minister. You know, and rural Canadians are really concerned that this policy that you're implementing, having a mandating buying vehicles, is out of touch of what the reality of what's happening in rural Canada. So why hasn't your government introduced an electric vehicle plan specifically designed for rural Canada?
I mean, we're allowing for the reality of rural Canada to be taken into account. First, we're not going for zero-emission vehicles tomorrow morning. We're going for zero-emission vehicles in 2035. We will be deploying. We're in the process of deploying 25,000 charging stations across the country, and we will do more after that. And our program also includes plug-in hybrids, which can work very well for people in remote community. I actually happen to know a number of people who aren't close to near urban centers and who have plug-in hybrids, and it works wonders for them.
So specifically, though, for rural Canada, like I have 2 national highways that actually go through my riding, the Yellowhead and the Trans-Canada. You know, 5 charging stations, publicly charging stations. So there is no plan for rural Canada.
Of course there is. Of course, we will be deploying.
You're going to take them into account, is what I heard, but I didn't hear a specific plan.
We will be deploying this charging network stations all across the country, including in rural Canada. In Quebec, in 2015, we had 6 charging stations. We have more than 2,000 now. In a matter of 4 or 5 years, things can change really rapidly, and things are changing rapidly when it comes to electrification.
Yeah. You're confident electric vehicles can survive minus 45 degrees going across the prairies with 5 charging stations?
I don't own an electric vehicle. I don't own a vehicle, full stop, but my service vehicle is a fully electric, is 100% EV, and I take the train as much as I can between Montreal and Ottawa, but we take the car even in the winter, and it works.
Yep.
Norway, as you may know, is a cold country.
We're not talking about Norway.
50% of vehicles sold in the cold country that is Norway are electric vehicles today. It can be done.
Not the size of Canada, though.
3,000 kilometers from one coast to the other.
What is the average cost of an electric vehicle in Canada?
I don't know that by heart. We could provide that information to you by writing.
So you're going to be mandating Canadians to buy electric vehicles and you don't know the cost of them?
Again, 50% by 2030, 100% by 2035. Most experts agree that by 2024, 2025, there will be no cost difference between internal combustion engine and electric vehicles. So our mandate
today, though,
will come.
Canadians are concerned about today.
But we're not mandating anything today, sir.
Okay. So they're right now.
We're encouraging.
So Toyota was in front of the committee here a while back, and they said that basically the average cost of a zero emissions vehicle was $56,000, double the price of a gas-powered vehicle. So, Minister, the average median household income in my riding is just below $50,000. Not all Canadians make $270,000 like you, Minister. So do you believe these vehicles are affordable?
First, as I said, most experts agree that by 2024, 2035, there will be no cost difference between electric vehicle and internal combustion engine. And our mandate comes years after that. The first part of the mandate comes in 2030. So way before the cost difference between internal combustion engine and electric vehicles will come into force. And you have to remember that right now EVs are more expensive to buy. They're way cheaper to operate. And if you look at the full life cycle cost of owning and operating a vehicle, there are substantial épargne, my apologies, savings, thank you, Mr. Chair, that can be done. So simply looking at the cost of purchasing the vehicle is only looking at half of the equation.
Okay.
10 seconds, Mr.
Oh,
Mayor.
my. So you're... Oh,
Time flies when we're having fun.
10 seconds. That's fine. I'm done, yeah.
Taylor Roy.
I actually wanted to turn to the parks, the supplementary estimates for Parks Canada. I was noticing that we do such great work with Parks Canada in terms of, our cultural and heritage sites. But I was also noticing that we need a lot of money to go into protecting them, especially with the extreme climate events that we've been seeing recently. And I was wondering whether the supplementary budget requests are going to be going into protecting these parks, into dealing with wildfire and other threats.
I could try and give you an answer, but I think Andrew could give you a much better answer than I can on that.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Member. Yeah, certainly the $7.5 million that are in supplementary estimates do go directly, there is a portion that goes directly into our wildfire preparedness, our wildfire preparedness program, which actually does, I think, three things that are important to talk about. One is it does fire safe around different communities and economic interests that we have close by in parks. It also looks at the effect of fire on biodiversity and our ways of projecting into what will go on in fire, and from a fire prevention perspective, looks at how we would reduce some of the fuel stores through prescribed burn type of operations that we do in many places across the country.
Great. Good to know. So those funds will be going into the protection.
They go directly into those.
Thank you very much. And I was also wondering about the funding to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to the transportation and methane waste sectors. I'm not sure where that question should be directed, but I think there's an additional $9 million in funding requested for that area. And could you share with me how the committee is going to be ensuring credible reduction in greenhouse gases as a result of that investment?
So we're doing a lot of work on trying to shift Canada's economy from a linear economy to a circular economy. And that certainly includes waste management. We're putting a big emphasis on plastics for obvious reasons, but looking at the whole waste equation. It's a work we're doing with the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment, and landfill gas, landfill methane emissions is actually one of the few low-hanging fruits we still have in terms of emission reduction. The technologies are very mature. We know how to do that. It's been done in many parts of the country, and it's relatively easy to count the emission reduction. I mean, nothing is easy in this file, but this is in the easier category of the non-easy things we have to do.
Okay, good. So you expect to see very positive results in that area?
Yes, absolutely, and lots of collaboration with provinces, territories, municipalities. Everyone agrees that, these emissions shouldn't be going up into the atmosphere. They can be captured, transformed into biogas. You can burn it to produce electricity. There are a number of things that we can do rather than just let it go up and contribute to global warming.
Great, thank you. And then the third question I had was actually about the National Parks funding for urban parks. And I'm very pleased to see that there's going to be funding for additional urban parks across Canada. I think they're incredibly important, especially with extreme climate events, as we've seen that they make a huge difference, having green space in urban areas. And I was just wondering, is there an allocation of funds to help municipalities or regions create urban parks, and can they be created from existing protected spaces that aren't urban parks?
Andrew, would you provide some details?
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. I'm happy to. Sorry. Certainly, I'm happy to do that again. I had to off mute, so I guess even when you're live. Yes, so there are funds that are going towards national urban parks that help both, and because of the three things that urban parks are trying to do, and one of those being the reconciliation with Indigenous populations in the urban centres as well, that there are funds available both for the municipalities as well as for the Indigenous groups as we move forward across. And we are in the process with the Minister of signing agreements with mayors and Indigenous groups all across the country at this point, and have those in place. And I think your last part of that was on
just about
existing
protected green
and
space.
Certainly, and I'll use Colwood as an example. Colwood will probably be brought together of a lot of existing different protected areas, including some that are already in the federal family.
Okay, and agricultural as well?
Yeah. So we are looking at that as we move forward. Certainly, as I'll say, Member Carey probably well knows as well, that places like the Rouge, there is an agricultural component, and we certainly see that as part of how we would move forward.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
I'm going to give myself a question or two, actually. I've had some mail from constituents, and I don't need long answers, who are concerned about the Trans-Canada Trail and if funding for that will be extended. I don't know if you have any insight on that. And secondly, I know that you're looking closely at the land around the Dorval Airport, Pierre Trudeau Airport, and doing what you can to preserve as much of that as possible. And so I just encourage you to keep us in mind in the West Island around that issue. But so I don't know if you know about the Trans-Canada, if there's been a request to extend funding for the Trans-Canada Trail. I don't know if who would like to answer that. It's a very technical question, I know, and I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Andrew can answer on the Trans-Canada Trail, for sure.
So the Trans-Canada Trail funding was funding that came in a previous budget and is sunsetting. So I think we will all be waiting to see as we move forward in the federal budget.
Thank you very much. Well, Minister, I want to thank.
Park,
yes, go ahead, please. Yes.
We are having ongoing conversation with the Minister and Ministry of Transportation, Aéroport de Montréal, as well as the City of Montreal, to try and find a project that we can all agree on regarding the lands you were speaking
Wonderful,
of.
wonderful. Thank you very much for your attention to that. Yes, yes.
I was just wondering, I know that we had Mr. Carey on, for the last question. I'm just wondering whether...
I don't have his name here.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. I would have tried to accommodate. Well, Minister, thank you for your appearance. Thank you for a lively and informative discussion. I think we all come away from this with some new information and insights. We look forward to seeing you again. Members, we're going to take a very brief break to bring in some new witnesses, and then we'll get going for our second hour. Thank you again, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the members of the committee. Merci. Merci beaucoup.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I do want to say thank you to the witnesses for being here today and a few familiar faces. I was a little disappointed, Mr. Chair. I didn't have a chance to ask my questions of the minister, but I'm sure the officials will be able to give me some good answers. I, like my colleague, wanted to talk about a few important things to my local riding. One is the canal system. The other is, of course, the automotive sector coming from Oshawa. So I was a little disappointed to hear the minister. I guess he can get around in his government-provided car. Most people in my community, they need a car. They commute back and forth to work. And when they are going to be moving towards an electric mandate, what's really important is the infrastructure. And we did hear from the minister that there is something going on there. But as many of you know, we manufacture cars in Oshawa, and I was wondering, the automotive industry is asking, what is the plan to eliminate unnecessary regulatory and trade barriers between Canada and some of our competitors, particularly the United States? When they make investments in Canada, you know, they are looking 10 years down the road, and they want to make sure that there is not the uncertainty there. So I was wondering if you could please answer, what is the plan to eliminate these unnecessary regulatory and trade barriers between particularly Canada and the United States? And if you could frame it around a competitiveness lens, because we were working towards convergence of regulations, and now we're seeing many regulations different between Canada and the United States, and it will affect our competitiveness and our ability to attract that new investment.
Should I assume that Ms. Hogan will be answering that?
I will make a first attempt and pass it to my colleague Paul Haluka, our Associate Deputy Minister. I would just say that this area, very active area of climate change policy related to transportation and ZEVs in particular, is a collaborative effort amongst a number of federal departments. Of course, the Innovation, Science and Economic Development Department has a particularly important role to play with the automotive sector, as well as Transport Canada, and of course we have a key role to play on the emissions dimension of the issue. But Paul, would you like to respond as well?
Yeah, very happy to. It's a pleasure to see Mr. Carey again. So a couple of things. The transition to electric vehicles is obviously critical for the environment. It's also critical for the auto sector, as you well know. And competition is at the core of investments that the government is making. So Minister Champagne and Innovation, Science and Economic Development has been working in close partnership with provincial governments, and in particular Ontario, to support the assembly plants as they have been making commitments to transition their facilities in Canada to the manufacture of electric vehicles, and in addition, working to capture the greater supply chain. I mean, obviously, we have a strong strategic advantage around critical minerals, and getting those supply chains in Canada and linking it into the assembly is a critical part. So, I think we have two government-wide policy objectives here. Like the first one being the transition reduction of the emissions from the sector, and equally as important is the retention and even strengthening, I think, of our assembly plant mandates in Canada, and continuing to ensure that they can provide the strong and well-paying jobs that they currently do right now. And I think that transition is really critical. So the minister talked about the partnerships with oil and gas executives and the fact that he's been meeting with them. We are also meeting with executives in the auto sector as well. And just on the point of regulatory coherence, I would just note that we are in alignment with the U.S. The standards, North American standards, continue to be really absolutely critical to competitiveness for the reasons, as you well know, sir, in terms of our ability to continue to track mandates and to secure those. So we do have a very close eye on ensuring that the CAFE standards and the air quality emissions there's alignment between the two jurisdictions.
Well, thank you very much, and I would like a little bit more detail, so perhaps if you could provide the comprehensive plan, if you have it, even the fuel standards moving forward. I'm hearing a little bit more about that, and the critical minerals, as you so rightly pointed out, we have a natural advantage there, but I was wondering if we have, from an environmental standpoint, some ways of encouraging that mining sector so that we can be supplying that technology and those minerals to the auto industry. Second question is about the canal system. It's such a great economic driver, or potential economic driver. Here in Oshawa, just north, we have the Trent. But I was wondering, what is the infrastructure deficit on our canal system now? Do we have a plan to remediate? One of the things the minister said, he wants protection of Parks Canada and support safe and sustainable tourism. What is the infrastructure deficit in our canal system right now?
You have 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, thank you, MP Carey, on that. We can certainly get you what our infrastructure deficit is. I can say over the last, several years, we have made historic investments on the Trent Severn Waterway, the replacement of everything from bridges and swing bridges from a historic perspective to investments on the lock stations, to major investments on the dams. And we will continue to move forward in making those investments.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for your investment in the St. Anne de Bellevue Canal. It's a big hit. On the jetty, it's a big hit. We'll go now to Ms. Metlej Diab.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much for the witnesses for being here this afternoon, here to take advantage and sub in for Ms. Thompson, so really appreciative of that opportunity. And I would like to direct, I guess, my questions on environmental issues, but that are important to Canadians, but really to my community of Halifax West. I come from Nova Scotia. That's why when you said you're riding and you mentioned Nova Scotia, I was really happy because to be on the committee. I think I'm probably the only Atlantic Canadian here as well on the committee. No, I hear you, Ms. May. So let me direct my questions to Parks Canada initially, if I may. Can you explain for the committee, really, the development of our national urban parks policy with the selection and development of certain national urban park sites? Obviously, I'm very interested in the potential site in my riding, the Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes, which is an important ecological and recreational asset to my residents. But really, really, it's also a tourist site. And quite frankly, the last 2 years with COVID, we have seen so many people, regardless of where they live, sort of come to those sites. And I had the opportunity this summer for the first time to go and see it, and you really have to walk through mud and dirt, and there's no access to it, and we go through it through a business which apparently has given sort of the okay for folks to go through it and keep their eyes kind of whatever. So really interested for you to tell us where that policy is and where we are on that.
Yeah, and very happy to be able to turn to my colleague Darlene Upton, who is the head of the Protected Areas and Establishment and Conservation Group within Parks Canada, and is working on that policy as we speak.
Thank you very much. So we launched last August the National Urban Parks Program, and we're concurrently developing the policy at the same time as we've assigned currently 6 collaborative agreements with municipalities and Indigenous communities in a variety of locations, one of them being in the Halifax area. So we're excited about the objectives of the program and are working off a policy framework that's been developed. We're looking to ensure that the program contributes to nature and biodiversity, and that also includes climate, particularly in urban centers, and mitigating climate effects, connecting Canadians to nature, and working to support reconciliation with Indigenous partners who are a part of these projects. So we have 6 underway now. We're in discussions in the Montreal area, and the commitment is for 15 more. So we are continuing to invite municipalities and communities that are interested to contact us for more information on the program.
So if I may, just a supplementary on this specific one, I know there was $130 million that was announced last year for the National Urban Parks Program, and I'm just wondering, what is the projected cost to be spent? I don't know how many years or whether it was whatever, but, and then the question that I have, is it all on a planning, feasibility, consultation? Is there money set aside for infrastructure costs like parking lots, trail clearings? That's kind of the specificity. If you have any of that, I'd appreciate hearing that.
Yep, thank you. So we have $130.9 million for the next 5 years to work on the establishment of 6 national urban parks. So that will be mainly for feasibility studies, support for partners to work with us and to get those parks to establishment. And there is some money limited for some infrastructure work, but once these places are established and the governance structures are set up, we'll be looking at funding for the future management of those.
Thank you. So with my time remaining, let me turn my attention to a very different topic. I very happily and very privileged to sit on the very historic Parliamentary Committee of Science and Research. So let me ask a questions on the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council. In the remarks, there was a mention of $155,000 to go to NSERC to contribute to grants that will ultimately support the new impact assessment system. So can somebody please explain to me how this evaluation process works better to protect the environment, and sort of what you can sort of shed light on that as well?
Thank you for the reminder, and thank you for the question. So the new Impact Assessment Act puts in place a number of new features to really increase the robustness of the evaluation process around major projects. In supporting the implementation of the new framework, we've got a number of funding programs within the agency, including a modest research program that's intended to encourage research and development into practices that support impact assessment. Because it is a modest program, we've looked at how do we best leverage the resources that we have at the agency. So we've leveraged the existing networks that the Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council has in place with universities and postdoctoral students, postgraduate students, and leveraging those relationships in place to provide supplemental funding to encourage further research into areas that will advance research and science in areas that will support impact assessment, and leveraging that research to further enhance the science and understanding of approaches that
Thank you.
impact the environment with major
Merci.
project developments.
Merci. Madame Posé, à vous.
Madame Posé, you have the floor. Yes, thank you for staying here. I'd just like to give you some context about the Natural Resources Fund. As Mr. DeMarco said when he came to see us, he said it was a horrible mess and it wasn't reducing emissions. I think that that the Department of the Environment is the department that should be responsible for this area and to ensure that there are objectives met. Now, in international terms, Canada has been contributing $2.6 billion for some 50 programs that deal with climate change in general. That is part of the commitments that we made. From 2021 to 2026, it's going to be $0.3 billion, and that, again, is part of the commitments that we made internationally. But what department is actually going to provide a follow-up as to how this money is used? Is there a system? Is there a system, an accountability system, where you can account for this $8 billion? Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Question. It is a lot of resources. When you think about it, the 2.65, which is now been doubled at a level of $5.3 billion. We work very much in lockstep with Global Affairs Canada as a delivery partner for our international climate finance work. There's an array of programming, whether it be delivered through multilateral investments that the government makes or through bilateral work that we do in the developing world. And we will be ramping that up and doing the planning work around where the $5.3 billion will be invested. A couple of things to be aware of at COP26 in Glasgow, the government did make a couple of commitments about the allocations of those resources, one very specifically around the phase out of coal. Also a commitment that 40% of our international climate finance will be dedicated to the adaptation challenges that are existing, and also a commitment to 20% of our international climate finance going towards nature-based solutions and biodiversity. So there are a number of dimensions to our planning going forward. Your point on accountability is very important, and we report on an ongoing basis about the results that we achieve against those programs. Okay, pardon.
Yes, I just want to bring you back to the point that I asked the same question in the past, and we were told, in a sense, little, because on the two departmental websites, there are some 50 or 60 organizations that are listed, but what accountability is there? How can you follow up on how the funds are used?
Well, I think for every investment that we make, particularly in the area of international development, and I used to work at the Canadian International Development Agency, there are very clear accountabilities around those dollars. And that information is available. Maybe there's things we can do better to tell that story and explain it to you. So we can...
Yes, but it's under the umbrella of the Department of Environment. Perfect. In the supplementary estimates, there is a fund that is earmarked for the department's advertising. I heard my colleague talk about EVs. We know that there are billions being spent on ads for EVs, and Dodge, the Ford 150 and the Dodge Ram and so on, they're not EVs. So With respect to all these ads, when you take a look at page 125, there's a recommendation that is intended to raise awareness in the general population. But these communications initiatives, well, it's $19 million, but there is nothing for the Department of Environment and Climate Change. And another reference, when we had a program, an ad program to try to get people away from cigarette smoking, there was a lot of money tied into that. So why isn't there a proper budget for advertising to the 30 seconds? I don't know who's going to answer these comments from Madame Posé. Yeah, I just want to know. What department? Who wants to answer then?
Respond. That is part of our SUPs this time. And one of the things I would highlight is in the mandate letter of Minister Guilbeault, there's actually a really important reference to enhancing communications with Canadians, particularly around the climate issue. And we are working very hard on elaborating on a much more robust approach to communications, advertising, outreach, and engagement with Canadians.
Excellent. Thank you. Ms. Collins for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. The department's requesting an additional $1.3 million and proposing to transfer $2.5 million to the Department of Natural Resources for Terrestrial Cumulative Effects Initiative, which is open to Indigenous groups on the 2019 Trans Mountain Expansion Project Crown consultation list, and to additional Indigenous communities consulted for the 2021 Nova Gas project. Will this funding support capacity building within Indigenous communities for cumulative effects monitoring? And will the project's mitigation measures be adapted if cumulative effects monitoring data reveals increasing negative environmental effects?
I may refer this to John Moffat, but what I can say off the top is this is a very important part of Environment Canada's...
Maybe if you could get a response to this answer just in writing to the committee, if you had.
If you like, I mean, this is the work we do on cumulative effects related to these projects is a really core part of Environment Canada's contribution to the science and the health and safety issues around these projects.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and just wanting to get an answer about if these cumulative effects, if the data shows they're increasing, if it will be changed. Moffat's online. I'm so sorry.
I can answer very briefly if you want.
Yeah, please.
The answer is yes. Yes, the funding is absolutely focused on capacity development, and yes, the program is designed to be adaptive so that it evolves over time based on the data input.
Thank you so much, and sorry, Ms. Moffat, I didn't realize you were there online. I'm also particularly interested in the horizontal initiative funding for wildfire and flood preparedness and response capacity, given the climate fires in BC and the devastating flooding this past fall. What specific preparedness and response activities are being funded, and how is that money being distributed across the country?
Yep, so in supplementary estimate C, there was the additional $7.5 million, as I had said when the minister was here, to wildfire protection. A great amount of that wildfire protection goes towards, as I had said, the reduction of fuels, but as well the type of modeling work that goes across the country. Parks Canada is the federal organization that has actual firefighters on the ground, and we as well take that expertise all around the world. We were in the California fires, down in the Australian fires, and so that's a big piece of the work and the science work that we do. I don't know whether Darlene wanted to add anything. She popped up on the big screen, so
Thanks,
so
Andrew.
I'm going to say no.
Okay. Well,
there we
and
go.
then my next
Thank you.
question is about the Climate Lens initiative. What are the anticipated activities that will be funded through the approximately $1.9 million allocated to this?
Yeah, the Climate Lens is actually a really interesting new area for us, and what we're starting out with these initial resources is piloting. the work across several departments to try to better embed both mitigation but also climate adaptation considerations as proposals and policies are being developed across those departments. So it's very much a work in progress. We're in that pilot stage, and we'll see how things progress over the course of the coming year or two and figure out how to institutionalize it more fully.
Okay. The department is requesting a total of $9.8 million in funding to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the transportation and methane waste sectors, given the Environment Commissioner's recent report on the Emissions Reduction Fund, which wasn't actually designed to reduce emissions necessarily, but amounted to a subsidy for fossil fuel producers and didn't actually follow key greenhouse gas accounting principles. You can forgive me for being a bit skeptical about this. So how will the government ensure credible and sustainable reduction in greenhouse gas emissions as a result of this $9.8 million in funding?
Sure. Thank you very much for that question. So the waste and transportation, and the minister referred to that in an earlier question, particularly on the waste and landfill. This is a major challenge in terms of Canada's methane emissions. And the goal here is twofold. One, to increase the number of landfills that are collecting and treating their methane. And the second is around ensuring existing landfills operations are meeting systematic requirements. And we've been consulting with Canadians on those new regulations. There's a discussion paper, I believe, out right now that John Moffat's team is working on. And similarly, the regulatory work that goes on related to the transportation sector that was referenced earlier.
Maybe just very quickly last, the peer review with Argentina on fossil fuel subsidies, it's years behind schedule. Do you have a date? When do we expect to see that review complete?
I'm going to ask my colleague Hilary Geller to maybe, if she's got an update. I think our own timeline around 2023 obviously creates some importance of completing that work. But Hilary?
We have 20 seconds, please.
Thank you. I'll just note that Finance Canada is leading the peer review with Argentina. The first step is a self-review report that gets submitted for peer review, and then the peer review itself. And my understanding is that that's on track to be finalized, the self-review report, towards the end of the year.
Thank you. We'll go now to the 5-minute round, starting with Mr. Mazur.
Good afternoon, I guess. Thanks for coming out. I'm going to talk about rural Canada, since I represent rural Canadians. And today's PBO report, there was a lot of, I guess, speculation. We know that rural Canadians pay a disproportionate amount of carbon tax, basically. But there's always this government always comes back to us and says, well, here, like, you're getting 10% more. Than any other Canadian because you live in rural Canada. So I just want to know how that tax 10% was calculated for rural Canada.
Well, thank you. These are very important questions, and I think we've worked hard to, both with the Department of Finance and ourselves, to ensure that these questions of rural Canadians, farmers, a number of other northern communities are all factored into our work. John Moffat leads our team on carbon pricing, the Carbon Markets Bureau, and does a lot of the collaborative work with the Department of Finance. So I'm going to ask that John maybe respond.
I'll ask John then. Was there a study actually for the 10% to come out with a number?
Oh, the 10% was not based on a study. So a couple of points. First, today's PBO report continues to confirm that the average Canadian who receives
average, not rural, but rural is my point.
No,
there was no study done on the 10% then.
No, the 10% is a top up to what other Canadians receive. We've done studies on the impact of carbon pricing in the territories. We commissioned a study on the impact of carbon pricing in Indigenous communities,
And
So that'd be
and the RIAS that we prepared.
Where's
for
rural? Okay, because I just.
I'm trying to answer your question, sir.
Well,
and the RIAS that we've.
I've got
prepared,
other questions here, so that's okay.
Okay.
There's no study. An associate
Yes, there is.
assistant, so an associate deputy minister from the Department of Finance testified at this committee on this matter. He stated, and I quote, "It's not based on any scientific assessment." Is this true? Was there a scientific assessment done? Yes or no?
No, not to determine the 10%.
Okay. There was no scientific study done, though. For yes or no? Correct.
We've
No.
done,
Okay.
the RIAS that we did for the output-based pricing does include an analysis of impacts on rural Canadians.
No assessment. Okay. I noticed there's a line item from funding from agriculture. What was that support greening growth in agriculture and agri-food sector? What was that money used for?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy, for your question. So we are working in collaboration with Agriculture Canada, and actually we are doing work with them to ensure that we have a good understanding of the impacts of some of the work they are doing from an environmental perspective. So through an agreement we have in place with them.
What's the wanted outcome of spending that money?
So it's
for agriculture.
So I will turn it to my colleagues who is responsible for the program to ensure.
I've got more questions, so if you could table that, what's the purpose of spending that money for agriculture, and what's the expected outcome for it? That'd be good. And then I want to continue on with to talk about the Climate Action Incentive Fund, specifically with MUSH, Retrofit Stream. How much money from this stream has been returned to municipalities or hospitals in Manitoba? MUSH stands for municipal, universities, schools, or hospitals.
Our climate programs are led out of our climate change branch. So Douglas Nevison, who's our ADM there, maybe can respond to how the CAFE looks from a Manitoba point of view.
30 seconds.
Yes,
please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Chair. I can say, not breaking down the money that's been flowed at this point, the CAFE money for 1920, 60 million has been flowed to the MUSH sector across the 4 backstop provinces. We could certainly provide you with the.
They've only announced 5 million. So why haven't they announced the whole 60 million? And what's the holdup? They seem to be taxing quite nicely.
Very briefly, please, because we have to go on to Mr. Weiler.
Well, as you noted in the report that just came out this week, that the Manitoba committed funding was 5.4 million as of March 31st, 2021. The money is still flowing. It's a specific specification from the 1920 fuel charge. And I guess the point I would just make is that all money collected and attributed to CAFE will eventually flow to the province.
Mr. Weiler.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point, I'd like to move a motion that was circulated about 3 hours ago today. And this is based on the routine motions that we talked about in our last committee meeting.
Okay. Mr. Weiler, could we do it at the end?
At the end?
We're not in committee business at the moment.
Okay, then we'll do it at the end.
Thank you.
We'll scratch that. Okay, well, I'd like to ask a question. In the SUPs, there's 3.2 million to support wildfire and flood resilience that would help produce floodplain data and maps for communities across Canada that are most at risk of flooding. And of course, this is top of mind in my province of BC, given the events of last year. So I was hoping we could get an update on this funding and how it factors into the national adaptation strategy that we've committed to putting out before the end of this year.
Thank you very much for the question. Well, first point is this work links very directly to the work that we're doing related to a national adaptation strategy. This is kind of building that capability and capacity to better understand sort of what's happening out there in the world. So the flood mapping work has been ongoing for a number of years. NRCan, Public Safety, and as well as Parks Canada, and this is a major part of that equation. I expect as the National Adaptation Strategy takes shape over the course of the year and the consultations continue and the very, very deep engagements that we're doing, we're going to hear more about what more needs to happen in Canada to make sure that preparedness is a very large part of our resilience planning going forward, given the changing climate that we're all living with.
You. And as part of this national adaptation strategy, obviously I mentioned flooding and wildfires, but I'm wondering what other natural disasters, say, or what other impacts of climate change are being modeled as part of this strategy, and if there's opportunities for the average or individual Canadians to be able to participate as part of these consultations.
I'm going to ask Doug Nevison again to reply. His team is leading the work. I will say absolutely there are a lot of opportunities for Canadians to engage. We're working extremely closely with provinces, territories, importantly with Indigenous partners, Métis, First Nations, the Inuit, on the development of the strategy, but we really need to hear also from Canadians. And I think there will be a lot of opportunities for that, and we will be committed to facilitating that. But Doug, did you want to comment on anything else related to adaptation?
Maybe just to add, Deputy, that the next phase of the engagement process for the National Adaptation Strategy will be starting in the next few weeks. And the key element of that, there's been a lot of consultations, as the Deputy mentioned, with provinces, territories, national Indigenous partners, municipalities, business. But the next phase of the engagement process will be with interested Canadians. So it'll be a public engagement process to help develop the National Adaptation Strategy, which is we hope to have in place or have developed for the fall of this year. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to pick up on a line of questioning that MP Collins brought up earlier about the funding in the Department of Environment for looking at terrestrial cumulative effects. Last year, there was a seminal court case decided in BC with the Blueberry River First Nations that looked at the cumulative impacts of oil and gas development within the traditional territory as being such that it impacted their treaty rights. And I'm wondering if this is a case that's been analyzed and incorporated into the work of the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada, and how this is going to change the way that cumulative effects is done with respect to projects that are done on First Nations traditional territory.
Very briefly, please, 15 seconds.
Thank you. It certainly was a very important court decision. The Impact Assessment Agency is working with federal partners, discussing with the province of BC and working with our colleagues at Justice to review the outcomes of the decision. We're working very closely with the province to look at their action plan to respond to the court judgment and looking at how we better assess cumulative impacts as part of our project assessments as part of the Impact Assessment Act, but also the tools available to us to address the issues that we can't address on a project-specific
basis. Thank you. We're going to have to go to Madame Posey, please.
Oui, alors, merci. Thank you. I have 2 minutes, 2 questions. Our analysts, and I thank them, have given us a document with essential facts, and they say that the Impact Assessment Act was based on a methodology that takes into account health, economic, and social factors. My question is the following. To do an assessment, that takes time when you evaluate. And at the end, things that you started with might have changed. Has the agency thought about putting a type of update team in place that would deal with new knowledge that has come up? So to really just update their work.
Nous sommes
Your
encore-
mask, Mr. Hubbard. Thank you.
Nous sommes en-
We are still at the very outset in the first days of the implementation of this new legislation. So we don't have a great deal of experience about the beginning to the end of the entire process. It certainly is important to use the best science possible that is available to support the decisions that are taken by a minister or the government in this process. Yes, I suggest that you do that because I think it would be very important for the operation of the agency. I think that would improve the mission. My other question, the minister addressed this earlier. What is it called? The lens. He talked about the climate change lens, and that would take into consideration climate, economic, and social considerations. So what type of activities are you going to fund with this $9 million that are allotted to the lens? 1.9 billion.
Please, because please go very briefly. I'm told we have a hard stop at 1. I didn't know this was the case, but
Well, what I will say in response to that's a very excellent question. The climate lens, the resources here are to stand up a center of excellence, build capability and capacity, launch this pilot initiative. And when you talk about social, economic, and environmental considerations being embedded more into the decision-making processes of departments, ultimately cabinet decision-making, budgetary choices and decisions, the climate lens will create some disciplines for departments to be able to do that work in a more systematic way.
Ms. Collins, I'm sorry I didn't know that we had a hard stop. I thought we could go over 10, but I'm being told that by Health Resources. Can you be very brief, Ms. Collins?
The minister mentioned that
yeah, I just found it.
In reference to the clean fuel standard that we must ensure our methodologies are solid. Why isn't the government designing a standard that is in alignment with clean fuel standards in Europe, California, and British Columbia?
Mr. Moffat?
Very, very briefly, please.
So the clean fuel standard is very much inspired by and based on the clean fuel standards that have been developed in other jurisdictions. We have developed a refined life cycle analysis tool that is specific to Canadian circumstances, but that again is based on sort of best practices globally.
I have one last question. UVic Environmental Law Center has submitted a response to the proposed draft regulations on single-use plastics. They have a handful of key recommendations, including expanding the narrow definitions of single-use plastics away from durability requirements towards their intended use, expanding the scope of the ban on food service materials to include phthalates, perfluoractyls substances, and ending the export exemption. Is this the direction that the government is going in?
Briefly, please, because we have to stop, unfortunately.
Again, I'll go back to John Moffat, whose team is leading this regulatory development.
So the current regulations are intended as an initial step, and so we are very much looking at the recommendations from the University of Victoria and others about ways in which the regulatory regime for single-use plastics should be expanded in the future.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you accommodating this last-minute news that we had to stop at 1 because there's an event at 1:15. Thank you to the witnesses, and it was very informative, very interesting, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully shortly when we do the main estimates in the next maybe couple of weeks. So thank you. Meeting adjourned. Thanks.